Since my last video, which was a while ago, I've accumulated over 40 books that I've either read or DNF'd to tell you about. And that, quite frankly, was so scary. It has stopped me from recording for months. So I finally had to face the facts that I am just not going to catch up. Hello everybody, I'm Oliver and this is Chaotic Bibliophile, and today I come to you in my best grandpa chic to discuss books and goals. But before that, just to say, I started this year with the goal that I would make, if not weekly reading updates, just document my entire reading journey, and that worked surprisingly well for many months until in May I went crazy and I started training really hard in dance. And I'll talk a bit more about that later on. Um, and I just sort of devoted myself to it. I lost my head. And I was still reading loads, actually. Maybe slightly less, but mostly I was still reading. It's just that I didn't have any energy or inclination, to be honest, to discuss every single book that I was reading. And so I just let time go by. And then I realized that I just don't think that focus on making videos is there anymore for me. Now, I still want to tell you about some books. So that is what this video is. As my training has become more focused now, I do have more time. And again, I'll get to that in my little life update at the end of the video. But yeah, essentially, I don't think I'll resume the weekly videos. It's just not for me anymore, and that's fine. But I've still read some amazing bangers this year, and so I want to tell you about the cream of the crop, the top 20 so far. Also because I want to see which of these which of these books will make it to the end of the year list. Famously, I haven't even done my 2025 favorite reads, which it's coming. It's coming at some point. But yeah, I just thought it would be fun, and then I'll do a goals check-in, and then finally a little life update. So let's get started. These are books that I've read this year, not that have come out this year. I think especially this year, I haven't really been following new releases very much. And I will try and keep this short and snappy and moving along. A lot of these books I've actually already talked about, so if I can remember in which video I did that, I will link them in the description down below, as well as all the titles, all the translators that I can find, etc. And I'm going to try and keep this edit free so as to actually upload it next Tuesday. Okay, let's start. Just to clarify as well, these are in chronological order, so I haven't ranked them yet. And one thing that surprised me while crafting this list was that I gave 5 stars or 4 point something or 4 stars to books that didn't make it onto the list, and I stand by that rating. But yeah, it did surprise me that sometimes what I evaluate in a way higher is not necessarily what sticks with me the most, and that's fine. That's fine. So this was actually the first book that I finished this year, which is That Broke into Shining Crystals by Richard Scott. This is a poetry collection. I'd already read Soho by Richard Scott. He writes a lot about gay desire, and I love this even more than Soho, which is very archival and very sort of in conversation with London and history, whereas this one feels so much more raw and personal, and also it's a lot more about visual art and sort of desire as art, but also in the negative elements as well. It's both very celebratory and very exploring the darker sides of desire, and I loved it so much. Number two is Discord by Jeremy Cooper. I just love Jeremy Cooper. I'll read anything he writes. And this is a novel that I actually think this is a 2026 release. But yeah, this is about two musicians, a young woman who is, I think, a saxophonist, and an older woman who is a composer, and how they team up to prepare this piece. And I want to say hilarity ensues, but that is not actually what happens. Like all of Jeremy Cooper is quite subdued, but a lot is bubbling up in the surface. It plays a lot with sort of perceptions and point of view. It's very subtle and smart and precise, but still so. I don't want to use sentimental because it sounds like I am saying it's a bit zany or something, but that is not how I feel. It's more like it's just very tender in ways, but also doesn't shy away from things that might be uncomfortable. It's just not very melodramatic. I really, really loved it. I just think Jeremy Cooper is such a talent. Number three is Alien Daughters Walk into the Sun, an Almanac of Extreme Girlhood by Jackie Wang. And if you see me look down, is because I have my iPad here and I'm reading off that list. This is a collection of pieces, zines, essays, journal entries by Jackie Wang, who I didn't know before reading this, but she was sort of big in the zine era, Tumblr as well, in I guess the early 2000s then, or like late 90s in the US. And yeah, she's just so interesting. She's a very interesting thinker. She talks about queerness and gender and punk aesthetics and all of those really fascinating stuff. She's very knowledgeable, and I really loved her. I devoured this for such like a chunky text full of sort of miscellaneous thoughts. I still like got so much out of it. Number four is Butcher's Crossing by John Williams. I love me some John Williams. I need to read everything he wrote. This is Western-ish. It's set in the West. It sort of confronts that frontier narrative. It's about Andrew, I think it was his name. He is a dropout from Harvard, and he comes to the West to work allegedly for something he doesn't even know what, and he goes and finances this quest for buffalo skins, and it is just a big tragedy that breaks my heart, but it's rendered so in a John Williams way. There is no other way to explain it. He has a prose that almost feels ornate, like painterly, but it actually isn't. It's not Baroque at all. And yet it's so just effective and so good at expressing emotion from male characters that are usually quite withdrawn. And that is part of what the book is exploring. And I don't know how he did it, but I have never read anything like him quite. So yeah, obviously if you haven't read Stoner, read Stoner. It's also amazing. Number five is Saint Sebastian's Abyss by Mark Haber. This is interesting because when I first read this book, I loved it, but I thought it bordered on exhausting. It's a book about a rivalry between two critics who focus on the same fictional painter, and now one of them is dying, and he sent a very disturbing email to the other one who's flying out to see him. And so this is like a very slim novella where this person is like obsessively thinking about that email. It's really funny. It's really, I feel like I described it at some point. It's like as if Thomas Bernhard was more like self-aware and also had a sense of humor, something like this. I really loved it, and even though I feel like I didn't rate it that high at the time, I should fact check this, but I keep thinking about it all the time. I reference it a lot. Yeah, I just really, really love this book. I should stop saying I really love this book because obviously I love all of these books. Anyways, number six is Jane Austen's Bookshelf by Rebecca Romney. This is an amazing scholarly work that is also so apt for the general public, and it has an element of memoir in it. If I had actually gone the academic route, this is how I would have liked to write. This is the kind of work that I would have liked to do, because it's so approachable, but also it's full of fantastic feminist criticism. Basically, Rebecca Romney starts discovering all the authors that might have influenced Jane Austen as she challenges this narrative that Jane Austen was the first woman novelist in the English tradition, that everyone before her was sort of not worth anyone's time, and that she sprang up fully formed when that was not the case. Interspersed with that are Rebecca Romney's experiences as a antiquarian bookseller, which I also thought were interesting, and so the mix of history, literary criticism, material culture, and memoir, I thought everything was superbly done. Everything was scholarly perfection. I did say I wish this book had been slightly better edited from an external editor's perspective, but that's just nitpicking. It's such a good book, and I, again, think about it all the time. The following book is The World of Yesterday by Stefan Zweig, translated by Anthea Bell to the English. This is just a remarkable memoir. It feels like an old school memoir where it does feel like an author reminiscing. And it's a memoir that does focus so much on culture and politics at the turn of the century Austria, the beginning of the 20th century, everything that sort of leads to the Second World War, which is unfortunately when Stefan Zweig committed suicide, I believe like 2 days after completing this book. So this book, it really is a swan song, and yet it is so controlled. The beginning has this air of optimism and do nostalgia, and then it becomes bleaker as it moves along, which I think obviously reflects the author's positioning, but it does so in a way that feels, again, in control in a way. He's not a very sentimental writer. He values humanism in the truest form, which, works for his writing. And I really, really recommend it if you like European history, if you like autobiographies or memoirs. I think this is one of the best ones I've ever read. Up next is The Strangeness of Beauty by Lydia Minatoya. I gushed about this book so much. I'm going to try and find where I did that. But yeah, it's an amazing, amazing book. It's an I novel that plays with the concept of an I novel, which, in case you don't know, is a Japanese autobiographical novel. And it's about this Japanese immigrant. She lives in the United States with her husband, but then her husband passes away. She's quite young, so she dedicates herself to raise her niece. But then, because of the brewing tensions leading up to the Second World War again, she is sent with her niece to Japan, and she goes to live with her estranged mother, who is the descendant of this hugely important samurai family that now has sort of crumbled. It's about, East and West. Where do we fit in? Race, politics, but it's quite like an interior novel because it is an I novel, and it interrogates why Japanese people are drawn to I novels, and it plays with time a lot, which I also think is interesting. I really recommend it. I was so surprised that I'd never heard of it. Number 9 is The Loneliness of Sonia and Sunny by Kiran Desai. This is the kind of book that if you need a chunky beach read, this is your book. I don't know if it's out in paperback already, but it is very solid, very good storytelling. It's about two immigrants who are from India. I think, are they from different parts of India? I guess not, because then their families meet. Anyways, they both have emigrated to the US under very different circumstances, and it's a very big family saga. It's not without its, I don't want to say problems, but more like it's not a perfect book. It's very big, but it's so all encompassing, and it has some interiority writing that is so precise, especially if you've lived as an immigrant. The way it talks about loneliness and family, the way I also love that the characters are both sometimes very unlikable. They're just human people, which you would think is obvious in books, but that is not always the case. So I really, really appreciated this book that spans a long time, and it feels so fearless in a way. It isn't afraid to lose you. It isn't afraid to show you the ugly affects of these characters, and I really respect it for that. And is América by Grandin. This is this massive, sprawling history of both America's North and South America in relation to each other, and especially how the independence movement sort of gestated. It is a lot about how the geopolitics shaped up the way they are. More than the geopolitics, I guess, it's about how the colonization values and then the independence values sort of shaped the current political climate in a way, but it's a history as well. So it's very interesting. It talks about so much political philosophy, but in context, and it's very relevant, and it consults so many primary sources. It is a big undertaking, but one that I urge everyone to take. The next one is Tema Libre by Alejandro Zambra. And the thing is that this book is not really translated to English, but also it is. Basically, there is a book in Spanish called No Leer, Not to Read. And that is translated to English by Fitzcarraldo, at least in the UK. But that book takes from both No Leer and Tema Libre. So I'll just tell you, go fetch Not to Read, translated by Megan McDowell. These are essays. Alejandro Zambra, to me, shines in the short story and the essay. And when he blends both, mwah, so good. Alejandro Zambra is a very cool Chilean author. He lives in Mexico. He talks a lot about literature and Chile and Chilean history, and also fatherhood and masculinity and sort of relations between men, but from a very soft or tender place. Very soft boy complimentary. I know that's now a loaded term, but if the term ever could have been applied complimentary, then that's Alejandro Zambra. Number 12 is The Road by Cormac McCarthy. I finally read The Road, and guess what? It is as good as everyone says. It's a terrifying, dystopian, post-climate disaster tale of a father and his young son after the mom has killed herself because she just couldn't stand it. And they keep going, and it is harrowing. I will say the writing is very sparse. It's very good and very evocative, but very like sparse, which just is in high contrast with what I was used to. That is Blood Meridian. But yeah, this was really, really good. 13 is, I think, the best, if not literally top 5 books I've read this year, and it is Who Killed My Father by Edouard Louis. I read it in Spanish, translated by Pablo Martín Sánchez, and in English it is translated by Lorin Stein. This is a memoir by Edouard Louis. Oh my god, I just remember I have some of these books because I wanted to not have to get the pictures. Ugh, just wait a second. Okay, let's going. Just for the record, this was my copy of The Road. And this is Who Killed My Father. This, as I was saying, it's a memoir. It's very short. It's one of the best books that I've ever read. And it's also under 100 pages. It's about Edward Louis' father and their relationship with the dad being working class and quite homophobic, while Edward was growing up gay in a very poor working class family, and it deals with sort of class consciousness and protest and the intersection of those sort of class politics with queer liberation politics, and how they are interrelated and how they are all related to masculinity. It is such an insightful little book. Everyone should read it. All right, so I'm not gonna lie, I am flagging, but I'll keep going because I don't have any more time to record. So, The Penguin Book of Japanese Short Stories. This is edited by Jay Rubin, and the stories are translated by a myriad of translators. A lot of them are Jay Rubin, to be fair. This was a very good selection, I will say, of contemporary Japanese short stories. If you want to know what the 20th century on is all about, this is your go-to. It is a very masculine selection in a way. There are loads of women authors, but I don't know, there was something about the stories that were selected that I really thought were all of sort of a kind, which, depending on what you want from an anthology like this, might be a disservice. But as a reader, it was actually quite nice because it felt quite cohesive. And I just really loved most of the stories, and I think about them a lot. I read this over a number of years, actually. So I don't know if I could consider this sort of the top books that I read this year just on that account, but I did discover a lot of authors that I now love thanks to this. And I don't know, if you really want to get into Japanese literature, I would recommend this, especially if you want, again, contemporary and modern classics vibes. This is very good and now is out in paperback. So that will tell you a lot about how long I've actually had this. East of Eden by John Steinbeck. I finally read this book. So good. This is an epic tale about this family in Salinas Valley, or a lot of families, but it focuses most of it is focused on two brothers whose names I've now for Adam and what's the other? Is Adam the dad? No, Adam and Carl. What's his dad's name? So Adam's the dad, Cal and Aaron are the sons, but then also Adam has his other C brother, which is Charles, because obviously they are, no, I shouldn't say obviously, it's called East of Eden. There's a whole sort of biblical twist on the biblical Eden, Cain and Abel, but there isn't, um without the murder. There are some deaths going on, but that's not what happens. Is that a spoiler? I don't think so. Anyways, I am doing such a bad job at describing this beautiful, subtle, sprawling narrative that I am just obsessed with. I will also say, surprisingly homoerotic. Like, this functionally becomes a homosexual marriage, but which mean Adam and his servant Lee, who is a Chinese man who at first pretends to be less educated than he is. They sort of form this family unit and raise these brothers after a woman leaves, and that woman sort of incarnates evil, but she's still a bit more interesting, I would say, than just being evil, although that is her core personality. I don't know. I think maybe this wouldn't stand a feminist reading that well, but it's still really fascinating. So I highly, highly recommend it. It is a chunkster, but it just goes by. I just couldn't stop reading as soon as I started, and I actually think I finished it in less than a week because it was so good. Another one that is so good and everyone should read, The Twilight Zone by Nona Fernandez. This is translated to English by Natasha Wimmer, but obviously I read it in Spanish, which is this edition. Nona Fernandez is a Chilean author who writes a lot about the dictatorship, but even more so than books set in the dictatorship, mostly about the aftermath of that, and the aftermath from an archival perspective, from a perspective of maybe children who were growing up during the dictatorship but maybe didn't understand what was going on, and how those children deal with that in as adults. And this in particular is her sort of autofictional investigation of one of the big torturers who went one day to the newspaper, and he was so racked with guilt that he confessed that he had done it. And they released like a huge profile of him. And she is a character in here as the journalist who engages with this text. It's really good. It's so effective. It's very um, sad. It feels such a small word to use for such a big thing, but it's true. It's a very like sad and affecting book. That said, I think everyone should read it. I also found it really inspiring just in terms of confronting the past and confronting it in ways that we can move forward from, or at least interrogate our own sort of trauma from it. So yeah, highly, highly recommend. It's also quite short. Sex is No Emergency by Dorothy Max Pryor is the follow-up to 69 Exhibition Road, and these are memoirs in not vignettes, in essays, except they are not essays, they're like stories. It's literally, that's the word she uses for it. She just talks about, oh, this is a story about that time. It just makes it also readable. It's also full of pictures, which I really appreciate. Dorothy Max Pryor was a drummer in a number of projects, including Psychic TV, and she was also a performance artist of the punk generation. She now lives in Brighton, and the London she describes is completely foreign to me, but also so recognizable. So in this one, she was also, by the way, a dance teacher. It's like she wrote this book for me. So she, for example, talks about going to teach at Pineapple Dance Studios, and I have taken class at Pineapple Dance Studios. She goes to certain streets with certain pubs that are still there. And of course, there are also things that are no there anymore. And that is also interesting to read. She's a very generous writer. She's very charming. I can understand how some people might not find this that engaging, or might think it maybe doesn't warrant a spot in a best of list necessarily. It's not a project that it's looking to be scholarly or to be super analytical about aesthetics or a certain period of life. But that said, it does come naturally to her. She does throw in some gems. So even though the tone is quite light and conversational, it also features some great insights about not just that period, so we're talking 60s and 70s London, but also aesthetics and trends and art, and how things are co-opted by the mainstream, or is it even possible for cultures to survive the mainstream and stuff like that. So I really recommend both of these. The next book is my first fiction by an author who is nonfiction I already love, but I was so charmed by her writing as well in fiction, and that is Cross Stitch by Yasmina Barrera, which I did read in Spanish, but it is translated to English by Cristina McSweeney. This is a novel that almost reads like a memoir. It is in that sort of key of, I am telling you a story, a personal story, with facts and tidbits thrown in there to sort of help me make sense of the narrative. It's about three friends in a sort of those trio friend groups that are always quite complicated. They've been friends since school. Now they are adults. Life has led them through different paths, but one of them has now died being quite young, and they are not very sure if it was suicide or an accident. It's not a mystery book. That is not the point of the book, by the way. It's about grief, it's about change, it's a coming of age book as well. And one of the very cool thematic things that it does is sort of talk about weaving, and it's called cross stitch because they do. Is it called cross stitch? No, embroidery. That's they do embroidery, all of them, and so they talk about text about like knitting and text like a sort of mesh of things, the skin as mesh, all of it as sort of uh interwoven thing. uh I am not describing this very well, but I swear it's both really refreshing to read, really easy to read, but so profound in the simple ways, and also from a point of narrative. She will sometimes finish off a scene with a very tiny detail that rounds or like deepens a character in ways that I found so just effective and good, just good construction. All these three women just felt so three-dimensional. And there's also the thing where it's a very female novel. There are a lot of male interests actually, but they are almost secondary, excluded from the world of women. That is the world of embroidery, the world of literature, and the world of, female um camaraderie. It's so, so good. Two more that I have: A Mountain to the North, A Lake to the South, Paths to the West, A River to the East by Laszlo Krasznahorkai. Translated to Spanish by Adam Kovacic Mejaros and into English by Ottilie Mulset. I'm sure I butchered all of that. It's all written in the description down below, I promise. But yeah, this is a really short novella by the latest Nobel Prize winner. This is set in Kyoto, out of all places. And I can see, even though at first I was surprised to find out this was the thing, I can see how this tale of the great grandson of Prince Genji from Genji Monogatari gets lost in a Buddhist monastery, but then when he finally gets somewhere, it's all sort of corrupted by the West and by, modern vices. I can see why a Hungarian writer would find those resonances. But yeah, it was just so, so good. So delicate. Nothing happens in this book. It's just vibes, just subtle vibes. It's as if, those very detailed Flemish paintings. It's as if this was one huge three-dimensional Flemish painting that you can just submerge yourself into and look at all the details. That said, there are some very subtle changes in perspective that just were so good and were so interesting and get the point across. I know this won't be everyone's cup of tea, but it's actually a book that I would reread over and over again. And finally, number 20 is Una cierta idea de mundo by Alessandro Barrico, and this is translated from the Italian to the Spanish by Carmen Garcia. Unfortunately, this is not translated to English, which is a shame because these are essentially columns. The closest I can think of is Nick Hornby's Polysyllabic Spree. That was much more, it was much lighter and it was much more about reading, almost in itself. And he did this, had this joke running, is that he could only really talk about books he loved, because if not he could get in trouble with authors. And it was more diaristic in a way as well. This is so insightful, and it almost takes the books as a starting point to make broader points about literature, but also the world and politics and what sort of these books teach us, but not in a didactic way. Actually, he does talk about didactism in literature as well here. So it is very, very good. I don't think it would ever be translated to English because it's quite an old book by these days standards. But I also thought the mix of very eclectic books was very refreshing to read in these types of books. I love books about books, but after a while, a lot of them do start looking alike, and it was really, really nice to see something different. But again, even if it had been all the same books, I think I would have still loved this because there was something in the way that Bariko was writing and the way he was reflecting on them and sort of expanding on what I thought I could even like reflect upon a book I've never read, that was so compelling and so, yeah, just enriching as a read. So I really, really recommend it, even if you don't like his fiction, because I've read Silk, I wasn't very impressed by it, and I still love this book. So yeah, those are the 20 best books or favorite books for myself that I've read this year. I've already been waffling for a while. Let's talk goals. Arguably, my biggest goal of the year was to always keep a healthy distance between the books acquired, be that bought or gifted or exchanged or anything, and the books that I've either read or DNF'd. Basically, just got to. And I am pleased to report that I've done it. There were a couple of times so far in the year that's been a bit dicey, but now, thanks to a lot of discipline, I've managed. This is a goal that I hope to keep my entire life from now on. I don't need to read every single book that I buy right away, but I still want to always be reading more books than I'm acquiring at the end of the year, at least. Because obviously, some of the times where it looks a bit dicey was when I went to a book fair and when I did this or that. But especially if I return to work in publishing, I think I'm gonna have to be vigilant about this. Let's move right past my weekly video goal, which of course has fallen completely apart and I will not be returning to. Let's talk about the challenges that I've kept track on the story graph. So I've finished 87 books out of 150, and that number 150 is basically what I would get if I completed all the challenges that I have and I don't double up on any books, which I haven't done except for one book because that challenge specifically requested that it was a book you could double up on. But other than that, each book gets its own slot. If I complete all my challenges, plus a few extra books that don't fit any challenge, then I would surpass the 150. So the numbers goal was not very important, to be honest. Then we've got Mr. B's Full Bingo, which I am 58% in. I read 14 of the 24 books, and I'm really pleased with this. It's really going well. However, I have not followed my TBR. In case you don't remember, I made a TBR for this challenge that also explains the challenge. I'll link it in the eye and down below as always. And that was fun to make, but I have not followed it very much. And you know what? That's fine. I've also made some progress in Amelia Reed's TBR 53 down 2026, which is basically just read 53 books that you've read. I mean, that you've owned from before 2026. I'm not that worried about this because I've just been focusing on different goals, and so my plan is to complete all the other goals which are more focused thematically and then focus on this goal. That said, I am 28% in, which is 15 out of 53 books. I'm also doing Jen and Carrie's reading spa, and I keep it up every month. I'm 50% in. I'm finishing the July book, but I will finish it by the end of July. This video will just be posted after, but rest assured I'm well with that. Read 5 classics. I'm only 20% in this goal. I've only finished one, but I'm not stressed because again, it's one of those that's like, oh, I've been reading some other stuff, but I know these ones are coming down the line, so you'll be fine. Then big book challenge, I'm 42% in, so 5 out of 12. I am a bit behind in this, but I have been prioritizing books much more this year, which is very pleasing to me, and I have a lot of big books on the go that are more dip in and out of, so I'm sure I'll be fine. And also, I have read a big book that I actually used for a different challenge. That is how confident I am that I can achieve this. Read 5 short story collections, and I am 80% in, 4 out of 5, almost done on this. Good with that. Then read 12 of the books I got in 2025. Last year, I had the same goal about acquiring less books than I read, and right at the end, I failed. I am 67% in, with 8 out of 12, so pretty on schedule. Did I read one more? I feel like since writing this down, I might have added another one to that. But anyways, the screenshots I think are fresher, so there you go. Then read 5 poetry collections. I'm 80% in. Read 5 essay collections. I'm only 40% in. I have read more. I just finished one that went to the Mr. B's challenge. This was slow going at first, as I say always. It takes me a bit to like get into reading a collection because I just want to give it a lot of my attention. I want to be able to highlight and make notes, which makes me slow to read essay collections. But that said, I really love them when I read them. I really enjoy them. I find them quite memorable when they're good. So yeah, um, I'm excited, and I think I will also complete this one. And then read 5 music books, because if you know something about me, you know I love my music related books, nonfiction specifically, and I did it. I did it. I did it. It's complete. I read 5, and there's more in the horizon that will fit other challenges as well. So we're so back. Maybe wait that all the music books I read this year ranked. The Return. Read 12 modern classics, and I'm 50% with that, so I'm pretty feeling pretty good about that one. And I'm also feeling pretty good about that one because I really love modern classics, and I always feel like it's time well spent when I get to them. So I'm glad I'm finally prioritizing them because I've been talking about it for a long time and now I'm doing it. Read 12 contemporary classics. I'm 33% in, which is a bit behind, but I also have plans for it. It is a like controversial quote unquote label, but I do think there are such things as contemporary classics, which to me is anything that has become a classic that is taught and revisited and sort of stood some of the test of time, or maybe, you know, it's something a Nobel Prize winner released after the 2000s, something like that. Yeah, I have plans to read more of those. So those are my goals. Overall, I actually think I'm kicking butt this year. Now the last thing on the agenda is a little life update, and my biggest news is that in early May, my wife and I submitted my application for my spousal visa, and as of last week, it has been approved. It's valid from actually the day I'm recording, but I'm moving mid-September. I'm really, really excited. I'm so relieved. I actually thought it would take longer, and then when I realized it could actually take not too long, I freaked out. But then now it feels like it's taken exactly the right amount of time. I'm ready to move, but also I am really, really happy with everything that I've gotten to do here in Chile, which a lot of it is dance. Particularly, I've started training a freestyle dance called whacking. You might not know about it, but it is a really cool style. I'm leaving a demo of a video that I like a lot. It's a final of a competition, but it comes from LA in the 70s. It's inspired by martial arts, by, well, more like martial arts films, like Bruce Lee films, comic books, and most importantly, Hollywood, like Golden Age Hollywood, the book Four Fabulous Faces, and, you know, just like glamour and drama, and it's danced traditionally to disco music. It is just such a wonderful style. It's also very compelling to see, so please check out the video that I've linked below because I think you'll enjoy it. Last week I had my first ever battle. I'd never done it before. I was so nervous, but also I really, really loved it, and I made it through the cut because basically you do like the filters, and then I was selected, I battled, I won once, I lost the other one, but I made it to the semifinals, which I was very proud of. It's a really cool style and I wanted to share that with you. And I will continue to practice that in London because London has a very healthy and thriving whacking scene. So I'm really excited about that. Yeah, I've been packing up the few books. A lot of people have asked me, oh my god, you shipped all your books back to Chile. Are you gonna ship them all back to the UK? And the answer is obviously not. Sorry, I don't mean to be rude to my friends, but that would be insanity. First of all, I don't have the money, but also in London, I'm not going to like have a home in the same way. My wife and I will live with her parents for a bit until we can rent our own place. If we ever settle down somewhere where I can, you know, have a library the same way that I do here, then yes, of course I will love to ship my books, but I'm not holding my breath. They have a home here. Also, my dad loves having the books here. He has access to them as well. So I think it's okay to have it as a sort of home family library. But I am obviously taking loads of books, as many as I can. So let me know if you would like a third part of the books he carried. Because you will see different books, I will say that. Like a lot of these books are books that I didn't have in London that now I want to read. You see what I mean? So I'm really excited. What else? Oh, I have one more thing to plug, and it is my podcast with Danny. Pluma Pantalla is back. It's in a new format. People have been very positive about it. So if you know Spanish and you like listening to stuff in Spanish and you love podcasts and you love books and podcasts about books, Pluma Pantalla podcast will be linked down below as well, and to our Instagram. Give it some love. Give it a follow, even if you um don't listen to podcasts in Spanish, because we are uploading loads of stuff all the time, and I post stories about what I'm reading. I'm basically using it like my bookstagram much more than my actual bookstagram, so do check it out. And yeah, weekly videos will not resume. That is just not part of what my life is like right now. I did enjoy having a sort of life and reading journal while it lasted, but now my life has picked up in a way that I actually didn't expect it would, so I just don't think that serves the purpose that it used to. But that said, obviously, I still love talking about books, and whenever I can, I watch booktube videos, even if I'm still bad at commenting on them. Just hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you enjoy future videos that I make, whenever those may be. And tell me, what is the best thing you've read so far this year? Have you made any goals, and how are they going? That's all. See you next time. Famously, I haven't even done, but that is not how it. Yeah. Really should read more McCarthy. He has some interesting, um, yeah, contrasts. I feel like, nah. Maybe Adam is the dad. Wait. Hal and Aaron, yes, of the punk. And lastly, is that a word? Can you say lastly? Maybe, finally. Uh, I did it! I recorded.